Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to episode 125 of the Extra Mile podcast. This is Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad that you're with me today, and if you're listening to this on our release date, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to those of you that celebrate. We're hoping that it's a great holiday season for everyone. We know that for those of you who are taking the bar, this is a tough time of the year to balance out your studies and preparing for the holidays and family, and just how do you put it all together? And that's a big task. It's always tough, at least for many of us, to balance out all of the requirements and all of the social obligations that we've got around the holiday season. But then when you add the bar exam on top of it, it gets really, really challenging. And so one of the things that I wanted to do today, in the show notes, I'm going to link to a video I made a year or so ago where I talked about how to balance the holidays with your study. And I encourage you to check that out. It's a short little video, but I think you'll find it helpful in terms of giving you some practical tips for ways that you can continue to study without neglecting your friends and family. And so I encourage you to check that out. In today's episode, though, we're going to be doing a Hangout interview with another former successful bar exam taker. What makes today's interview a bit different is that our guest is someone that took the bar a few years ago. And I thought it would be interesting from time to time to go back and revisit with some students that took our course a few years ago to get their perspective on studying for the bar, now that they've had some distance and some time in practice, to see what advice and thoughts they would have for current bar takers. And so our guest today is Donnie Kilfin. He's a lawyer in Georgia and Florida. He took our course successfully for the Georgia bar exam, and he's got some great insight and stories and advice to share. And so I want to get to that interview in just a moment. I also want to invite those of you that are listening today, if you're taking the bar exam in 2017, we'd love to have you join us for a free 90-minute masterclass called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Now, you've heard me, if you've been listening to these podcasts, you've heard me talk about this webinar. It's incredibly productive and successful for the people that go through it, and we continue to offer it, and thousands of people have gone through the class and gone on to great success. And so I hope you'll join us and participate if you haven't yet. It's very simple to register. Just go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com, click on the button, and you'll have two choices there. You can register for our live seminar. The next one coming up after the release date of this episode will be on Thursday, December 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern, and that's 12 noon Pacific time. If you don't want to wait until the 29th of December, or that date just doesn't work for you, or time doesn't work for you, you'll see another button on our front page that's an on-demand scheduling of the same material. And so you can click there and schedule your own showing of the webinar, and that would be great as well. I always say that the magic happens live, but the on-demand is pretty good too. So either way, you can get that information. All you need to do is register. It's totally free, and it's information that you're going to find really helpful. We'll look at the 4 steps that you have to follow in order to pass the bar exam, and I think you're going to really be glad that you participated and got that information. There's some great offers and gifts there as well. So that's what we've got coming up in the near future. On next week's episode of the podcast, number 126, I'm going to be doing a recap of 2016 and the bar exam. It was a year littered with lots of pain and suffering for a lot of people, unfortunately. But we're going to talk a little bit about the trends and the things that happened in 2016, take a quick look forward to 2017. So I hope you'll join me for that special episode next week. But for now, I want to go ahead and jump into our interview with a successful bar exam taker, and let's meet Donnie Kilfin. Hey everybody, welcome to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Students. This is episode 31. I'm pretty excited about this. This is kind of a departure from our normal episode where I'm talking to someone who just passed the bar, and we're sort of in that moment of enthusiasm. I thought it might be interesting from time to time to go back into the archives. Since I've been doing this for 25 years, I've got some fairly deep archives, and to talk to some of our former students who've been successful and kind of get a perspective from somebody who didn't just pass the bar, but passed it a few years ago, and kind of what the world looks like to them and where they are. And I reached out to some of my former students, and today's guest was one of the people who graciously agreed to come on and do this, and I'm really appreciative of it. And so I want to welcome our guest, Donnie Kilfin, a Georgia attorney who I think you're actually in Florida now, right? Is that correct?
I am, yes.
That's great. And Donnie took our course back in 2012, is that? 2012. And as you talk to folks, they're going to hear your accent. I asked before we went live if it was Boston. You said Toronto, which is odd to me. I didn't think those sounded at all like. But why don't we start with you just kind of telling your story and how you came to be in a place to take the bar exam back in 2012.
Well, I moved down here from Toronto, Canada in 1996, and it was my intent to obviously go to law school. I applied to law schools all over the United States. I really wanted to move to Florida because my parents were in Atlanta. It was close. I liked the climate here, having come from Toronto. So I applied to Stetson. I got in, and after 3 years there, it was my intent to go back to Atlanta to reconnect with my family. But I got a job offer from the state attorney's office here in Pinellas County, and so that sort of changed things a little bit. It was a great job offer. It's what I wanted to do. So I took the Florida bar exam back in 2000 and passed that. Did much better in 2012 on the Georgia test. But in any event, worked for the state attorney's office for 6 years here. Did civil work for a couple of years, and then joined with a friend of mine, a career criminal prosecutor, gone out on his own. We formed Hessinger and Kilfin Law. And after about 5 years of that, I really decided that I wanted to go back and spend time reconnecting with my family in Georgia, because I'd been gone for so long. It was over a decade. And I was contemplating at that point starting my own business. And the one advantage I had being in Georgia is I could have lived with my mom and dad, which I ended up doing while I rented my house out here and learned all the ins and outs of running a business. It's much different from the practice of law, as you probably know. There was a lot to learn about marketing and accounting and things that I just was not aware of or knew about having practiced law. So for me, it had to be done. I had to pass the Georgia bar exam. It was really, I felt like the only way that it was going to work. It was just too risky for me to go out on my own without that knowledge. So I started on the internet, and I saw Celebration Bar Review course, and I started doing some reading on it, and some comments that I had read from your previous clients, and decided that I was going to give it a shot. So I did. I ordered the materials, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you were studying while you were working full-time as a lawyer, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. When you think back to that time, how much time would you think you were spending on studying on, like, say, a regular weekly basis? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Jackson, I really felt like it was sort of a do or die situation for me. So I spent a lot of time studying. I got home from work probably 6 o'clock. I'd eat some dinner, and I would work from probably 6:30 to 9 every night, just listening to the materials, taking notes, outlining. And I did that for a good 6-7 months.
Yeah.
You
started
I'll
early.
tell you.
Yeah, you started early and gave yourself a little bit of time to do that, right?
Yep. And I did. I felt like the bar prep course that you offered was spectacular. I felt I can't tell you how well prepared I felt going into that exam. I spent a lot of time studying for the Florida bar exam, but again, the difference was I was a full-time attorney while I was doing this. And so it was less time, I felt like, more time pressure, but I felt very well prepared. I did extremely well.
Yeah, I remember that.
On the Georgia bar exam.
I remember that. And I remember thinking, ooh, this guy's good.
Yeah.
And particularly when you do that, when you're working, I mean, sometimes people, I think, don't quite grasp how different it is to study for the bar out of law school versus when you're working and actually have a practice to attend to. Pretty different, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was, and I really, I don't think that having practiced law for 12, 13 years, or whatever it was, really played into my results. I've got to give credit where it's due. It was your bar course, and I have other friends down here that are Florida lawyers that also have family in Georgia, and saw what I did and wanted to do the same thing. So they ended up being celebration
Yeah, you've sent a
clients
lot
as
of
well.
people. You've sent a lot of people our way. We're
Yeah,
very appreciative of
I
that.
have. Yeah, my pleasure.
You've been.
I feel like I owe you a great debt. I
Uh,
really do.
that's very kind of you. I want to just for people that are in this process right now, from somebody who's been through it a couple of times and been successful and in practice. Um, I'm wondering, we hear so much about how practicing law is such a miserable occupation and terrible thing, and I know people kind of wrestle with that. Is there anything that you could say to somebody about why it's worthwhile to go through this pain and get licensed and become a member of the bar and practice?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is a very honorable profession. It's a profession. I'm not going to lie. It can be very trying at times. For me, I feel fortunate because, well, number one, I work for myself,
Right.
which I think is it's a good place to be. But more importantly, in the work that I do, I'm able to get very immediate and very tangible results for people that are in a lot of trouble. And I'm selective about the cases I take. I help individuals that are really good people that have made some poor decisions along the way, or kids that get a DUI, get arrested for marijuana, and are facing the kind of consequences that could have lasting impacts for the rest of their lives. And I do everything I possibly can to try to get them through that without those kind of lasting impacts. And it is a very rewarding profession to me. It hasn't always been that way. It was a long climb getting here.
Mhm.
But having been practicing now for close to 20 years, I'm in that place. And without sounding hammy, I really do believe that I am doing what I was put on the earth to do, and there's a lot of fulfillment in that. And most people, I think, that have been in this profession for some time will reach the level as well. It's very well worth it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because obviously, as you and I are recording just post election, I think there are a lot of people wondering, what's the rule of law? Does it matter anymore? Does it matter? Are we, what's going to happen? Regardless of what your politics were, just, what's going to happen now? And it seems to me it's probably never been more important for people to not stand on the sidelines and to, if you've been to law school and if you're, want to be a member of the bar, this is the time to jump in and become barred, don't you think? I mean,
Absolutely.
get in there. I mean, get in the game one way or the other, but
Yep.
get in the game. And,
Yep.
and I think, one of the things that I love so much about what you've done for us, besides just being a great source of referrals to people, is that you've really been a cheerleader in so much of what we post and put up online and supporting that kind of stuff. And I know you've seen a lot of people struggle with this process of taking the bar and the frustration and fears that go with it. What advice do you have for people when they're sort of in the midst of that? It just feels overwhelming to them, and they're in that do or die position that you described for yourself.
Well, it does feel that way, but I guess what I would say is it's going to be okay one way or another. It is very stressful. It seems overwhelming at times, but just know that, number one, there's a very good likelihood that you're going to pass the bar exam. If you put in the time, you put in the effort, and you study, there's a very good likelihood that you will be successful. And, in the outside chance that you're not, well, things in life, you get back on the horse and you go at it again. And, if you're not successful the first time, and you probably will be, there's a very good likelihood that you will. If you're not, go at it again. Don't give up. Keep forward. Never stop. Keep moving forward. And you'll get there. If it's not the first time, you'll get it the second time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I think that people can get really discouraged because it is such a hard process and going through it and then saying, now what, and going there. One of the other things I love about your story is that you have moved through a series of different career steps. From being in public service in the prosecutor's office and a partnership, and now out on your own. I'm guessing that you probably like being on your own. That's a good place to be as an attorney.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know that a lot of people who are preparing for the bar are wondering, well, what do I do? Jobs are in short supply in places. What's your advice for somebody after they've just passed the bar? What should they be looking to do?
Well, I always tell people that are up and coming that I have a lot of contacts at Stetson and people I know in the community that are law students, just because it's a pretty close knit community,
Yeah,
and
right.
Stetson's about 5 miles from here.
Mm-hmm.
I typically suggest to them that they start off either at the state attorney's office or the public defender's office, because in that capacity, and really I think that 3 years is probably what you need to get launched. More, sure, but after spending that time in that job, you'll know how to try a case, and it's that kind of position is one of the very few, I think, where you can start. They're going to hand you a file and say,
Right.
"Okay, go try this." I mean, you're
Yeah.
going to have some mentoring along the way, but that kind of experience is very, very difficult to get in any other capacity. I think I tried my first case 30 days in,
Yeah,
and my
that long,
first.
huh? Took that long to get there.
Yeah, 30
Yeah.
days. My first three, I was not successful. With more of that same type of discouragement, where I'm thinking, maybe I'm not in the right job. And it was an older prosecutor there that told me, hey, hang in there. You'll get the hang of it. Don't give up. Keep pressing forward. If you're not initially successful, you can't let that stop you. And he gave me a good talking to one night when I was ready to give up, and I did hang in there. And it was at that point that things began to change. And after 6.5 years there, I tried almost 65 jury trials, and I got better. And, it just goes back to what I was saying before.
Yeah.
Keep pressing forward.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. It's a great philosophy for people as they're in this process of taking the bar and then passing it. And I agree with you that most people will pass. I think there's a presumption sometimes that most people won't. That's not really true. And so it's certainly manageable and can be done. Well, as you reflect back, and I know it's been a few years now, to what Celebration Bar Review was like for you, what stands out in your mind? What do you remember about that process? I've had people claim that it's sort of like Stockholm Syndrome, that they hear my voice in their heads sometimes. But what stands out for you?
Well, there is a certain degree of that as well. I remember sending you an email the night after I had finished the bar exam, telling you how strange it was not to hear your voice on those tapes.
Yeah.
It was really weird. And you're like, hey, just chill out and relax.
Get over it. Yeah.
Get over it. But I think that what stands out for me really is just the user friendliness of your program. Materials were exceptionally well written. The lecture tapes conveyed the material in ways that, to me, were very easy to understand. And, having been in criminal law for 10, 12 years, I mean, there were a lot of those concepts that I hadn't seen since law school. Things like the UCC and Article 9 and
Right.
And that, I had to go back and relearn that, a lot of the property stuff. But I felt like it was just a very user-friendly system. In my opinion, as I've said, having taken Barbary and now I think Celebration is the best course on the market. And anybody that I know that's getting ready to take an exam, I tell them, this is what you need to do. And they do it. And they're successful too. As I said, Jackson, I really feel like I owe you a great debt.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's I think it's really encouraging for people to hear somebody that's been through the fire and survived it. And by the way, folks, for those of you that don't know, back in the days, we actually used cassette tapes. When Donnie's talking about tapes, he's talking about literal tapes. We were not always online, and we didn't do video. And the books were sometimes photocopied and not published and printed. I mean, we've come a long way over the years and a lot more things. But the core of what we tried to do I think, has always been to help people who are busy to get a passing result, to guide them effectively and efficiently. And I think you're a great example of that. I mean, you had a lot going on, and you pushed through, and you had great scores on a tough test. I mean, nobody should mistake Georgia for being a sucker's test. It is a very tough test. A lot of subjects, right? A lot of things.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
And it's remained that way. Yeah. So that's fabulous. Well, any other advice that you'd like to offer to people? I know that you're in our private Facebook group, The Extra Mile, as a kind of a mentor. We've asked some of our past students to be in the site, and it's really, this is an amazing thing for me, because in this community, we've got current bar students, and my staff obviously monitors it, but I've got some folks like Donnie who are just there to be supportive and to help out and just kind of pat people and say, kind of rub them on the back and say, it's okay. But, and it's an amazing community. But anything you would like to share with people who are right now, as we're talking, we're in the midst, obviously, of preparing for the upcoming February exams. So people are about, 3-4 months away from the test. What thoughts would you have for them?
Just keep studying, and it's just pace yourself and try to keep your stress levels to a minimum. It's easy to allow this to sometimes run away from itself in your own mind, and to sort of have a low-level panic attack from time to time, because for everybody, there's a lot riding on this. I mean, let's face it, people have jobs lined up. Some have kids and families that they're supporting, and they maybe haven't been working for a few years. Busy, you can always give me a call. I'm here at the office.
I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And I know that our students in the Facebook community appreciate you and the other mentors who are there. And it's really a nice thing we've got people that passed, and the bar exam is not the most fun thing in the life, and so they're willing to come back and revisit that, to help other people out. That says a lot. I think we talk a lot about kinder and gentler profession, and I think, Donnie, you're a perfect expression of that. And
thanks, Jackson.
I'm very proud to have you as an alum, as a student, as a friend. Well, it's been great having you with us today. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to share your experiences and thoughts. And for all of you who've been watching and listening, we appreciate you sharing your time, and we're honored that you would give up some time to be with us today. So I'm going to sign off for now. Thanks, everybody, for being with us, and we'll see you again on our next Hangout soon. Bye-bye for now. Well, that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for joining me and for being part of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. Now, if you'd like to catch up on prior episodes or check out the show notes, you can do that by going to our webpage at celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the link at the top of the page for podcasts, and there you'll find all of our previous episodes as well as the show notes. You can also subscribe to the podcast from that site, or you can go to iTunes and subscribe there. Just type in the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers, and you can subscribe and be part of the podcast series. And we would love to have you do that. While you're on the iTunes site, we would also really appreciate you giving us a quick, honest rating and review. That feedback is really useful to me as I prepare these episodes. It only takes about 30 seconds, so I hope you'll do that. Just type in the name of the podcast and give us your rating and review. Again, if you've got any questions or you'd like to know anything else about Celebration Bar Review or the courses that we offer, visit our website, or I invite you to contact us. My email is jackson@celebrationbarreview.com, and I look forward to hearing from you and to seeing you along the extra mile very shortly. See you on the pass list. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.